Hi everybody, I'm Emily, one of the designers with the Quilted Cow, and today I'm super excited to show you this table runner. It is called the Frenchie table runner. It is a braided table runner with no Y seams. But first, let's go ahead and thank our sponsors. We are sponsored by Husqvarna Viking Machines, Wilmington Prints, and Creative Grids, mats, rulers, and cutters. So let's get started. Okay, so here we go. First, what you're going to want to do is head on over to our website and grab yourself a kit. The Frenchie table runner is great. It's a wonderful runner that has the center of it braided, and it also uses a border print on the edges to make your borders. So make sure that you go and grab a kit. The kit is going to include all of the fabric that you're going to need in order to make this runner. It includes everything for the top, the binding, and your backing is going to be included in this. So that's exciting too. The only thing you're going to have to do is provide your batting. You're also going to want to buy the pattern. The pattern is sold separately, so make sure that you get your pattern while you're on the website as well. So what I did was I started by cutting all of my strips. When I cut all of my strips, and to the length that they need to be, and it says on the pattern, it's very simple, and then I'm going to lay them out in the order that I want them laid out. So what I'm doing is I'm starting at basically what I consider the bottom of the runner. So this is the first piece that I'm going to work with, the first two pieces. So piece 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're going to end up eventually needing 27 of these strips. I'm only going to lay out a few of these just to show you how I lay them out. Once you get them all laid out in the order that you want, whatever's pleasing to you, then you're going to start sewing them together. So obviously this is not 27 strips, but we're going to get started with this amount anyway. The other thing that I'm going to recommend is that you set up a little bit of an ironing station so that what you're going to do is you're going to sew 2 strips together, iron it, you're going to sew the next strip on, iron it, and keep working like that. So let me go ahead and move these over so that they're out of my way and I can have a little bit of an ironing station. Okay, so the first 2 pieces I'm going to work with, like I said, it's at the bottom here. I'm going to sew this first piece onto the second piece, and I'm just going to flip it up and sew down this edge right here. So I'm going to eventually end up flipping it all the way over. So 1/4 inch down, start at the beginning, and then work your way down a little bit past where that ends, where this first strip ends. All right, so don't worry about back stitching at the beginning or end, just stitch down there, and then you're going to press this open so that the smaller piece presses open. So now we've got that added. So we're going to add this fabric to this one, and it's going to cross over this seam that we just sewed. So grab your fabric, flip it over. So now you know you're going to sew down this side right here. 1/4 inch seam allowance. All of this is 1/4 inch seam allowances. Okay, so this time I'm going to press, once again, the one I just added, I'm going to press that one open. And this is a perfect way to do a braided runner with no Y seams. So lay that back down and grab the next piece. Once again, each piece that you're going to add is going to be added over the seam that you just sewed. So just keep that in mind as you're adding. Keep sewing over the seam that you just sewed. And now we need to trim this to the size that we need for the middle part of our runner. In order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to fold this in half. So when we fold it in half, you may be thinking, oh my gosh, it's not a perfect point on the top. It's not a perfect point on the bottom. What you're wanting to do is get about the same amount of space for your little triangles here, or your little squares that are showing, and make sure that there is the same amount of kind of the seam showing here as there is on the other side. So that would be the center of the runner. Don't move it one way or the other. If you do, you're going to be like way off center whenever you do this. So the next thing that we're going to do is we can take our iron and press this. So you press a crease. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to trim off these extra little pieces. So we don't want those zigzaggy pieces. The measurement that we're looking for, and you can open this up and take that crease and trim you know, the 5.5 inches that you need on either side. I went ahead and I left it closed. I left it folded the way I wanted it to. I pressed it, just give it enough of a press that it's going to stay where you want it to stay. So, and then I went ahead and just took my ruler and counted over 5.5 inches from the center of, from where that crease is. So 3, 4, 5.5. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and trim off that extra. So I'm trimming both sides at once. It's kind of a lazy way of doing it, but it's one cut and you know exactly where that center is as you're cutting. All right. So once we've got that, then we're going to go ahead, open it back up. If you want, you can press that center crease out, get rid of that again, and then we're going to cut off the ends so that they're straight. Okay, so I have my center crease mostly pressed out, not completely, but mostly. And I'm going to line this up with one of the lines on my ruler so that I know that the edge is straight. I'm sorry, one of the lines on my mat, not on my ruler, so that I know that the edge is straight. And then I'm going to trim off this end to get it a nice straight end. One of the things I want to watch for is that this seam allowance, you want to make sure that that is within the 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you can trim 1/4 inch beyond where this fabric meets that one. Just don't go any further than that, because if you go further than that, then you're going to have this raw edge showing after you've got it all quilted and bound. Line up my ruler straight with my runner, move it over so that one little join here is within the 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then trim off these ends. And then this one is just a matter of trimming it off straight. So I'm lining up my ruler so that it's straight with the runner, and then I'm just going to trim off this extra here. So once we've got that done, now it's time to add our border pieces. Now, the measurements for the runner says that it's 18 by 33. Now, depending on how fat your 1/4 inch seam allowance is, will depend on whether or not you make it to the full 33. I actually have only made it to, it looks like about 32.5, actually 32 5/8. That's okay, don't stress about it too much, but you are going to make sure that you cut both of your border pieces the same length as your runner is. That way everything's going to stay square. That's the important thing whenever you're working with quilts, or whenever you're putting borders on quilts or runners. To keep everything square, you want all of your border pieces to be the same size. So now that I've got my border pieces cut, now it's time to add them to the runner. So grab my pins, grab my runner, or my runner center. Make sure that my flowers are still going, they're all still growing in the right direction. And then I'm going to pin my border onto the runner. This is one of those times that I really like to use pins. That way I make sure that everything is lining up correctly. Now on the runner, because it's not huge long borders, I'm not going to worry too much about marking center, making sure everything is center. I just want to make sure that the length on it is the same. If I was putting a border on a quilt, I would totally be marking the center and having that going. Okay, so now that I actually have both border pieces pinned to this, now I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance down both sides. And real quick, whenever you sew this, before I get to the sewing part, sorry, the seam allowances on one side are going to go the opposite direction of the seam allowances on the other. So I always like to make it so that the seam allowances are going to travel through and they're going to stay laying down. If you need to, you can flip it over and put the border piece on the bottom so that your seam allowances always travel down. It's up to you. Just make sure that you don't end up folding your seam allowances up and down. Makes it a little bit easier in the long run. Okay, so now that I've got both borders sewn on here, I'm going to press these open. All right, so I now have a completed runner top. So this is very exciting. Like I said, the kit does come with the backing fabric that you need. It will also come with the binding that you need. So make sure that you grab yourself a kit from the website. Okay, so when you quilt this, you're going to lay out your backing fabric wrong side up. It always goes wrong side up. Give it a good press. Make sure everything is nice and flat. Put your batting on there, your choice of batting. I personally prefer cotton batting whenever I do my runners or whenever I pretty much quilt anything. You can use fusible fleece, a fusible batting, whatever you choose to use. I probably wouldn't do foam because foam is a little bit thick. But if you wanted to make this to be a runner that you can use and you can set hot things on your table, then go ahead and add some Insulbright to it. So cotton batting and Insulbright will make it more of like a hot runner or a hot pad runner. And then so you put your backing down, your batting down, and then your runner top right side up. Make sure everything is nice and flat and ready to go, and then you're ready to quilt it. But one of the things that I like to use whenever I do this, it's called the Free Fuse powder. So this Free Fuse basting powder is a wonderful idea, wonderful item to use. What you're gonna do is you're gonna open the top, there's a little shaker top to it. You're just gonna sprinkle the powder on. So I lay my batting down, I sprinkle the powder on, and then I press my top down and give it a good press. It needs about 4 seconds to melt that powder into a glue so that it holds it on. It is a semi-permanent, so it's not gonna stay that way forever. So you do wanna make sure that you quilt it after you put this powder on. Otherwise, there won't be any quilting, there won't be anything holding the top down. The next thing I do is I'll flip the whole thing over and then I'll put it on the back side of the batting and then put my backing fabric on top of that and press that on so that I've got all 3 layers basted together. You can also use pin baste, whatever you need to use in order to baste your sandwich. Once you get that done, give it a quilt, have fun quilting it. You can stitch in the ditch, you can do a little free motion quilting, whatever you choose to do. Bind it with your preferred method, and then you're going to have the Frenchie table runner. Like I said, it's a great runner. It's a braided runner without using any Y seams. That is perfect. It also uses your border prints. If you don't know what to do with those border prints, this is a really good idea to use those. Go to the website, grab yourself a kit. Make sure that you get the pattern as well. Frenchie table runner. Get the pattern because it is sold separately. It is not included in the kit. Make sure that you like and subscribe to our videos. And thank you so much for watching.
Okay, you wicked cool quilters, good job. You made it to the end. We would like to thank our sponsors, Husqvarna Viking Sewing Machines, Creative Grids, rulers, rotary cutters, and mats, and Wilmington Prints for the beautiful fabrics. Thanks for watching.